What are your worst college roommate horror stories? My best friend and I moved into the upper floor of an old mansion in the university town we lived in. I knew he had some mental health challenges, and so did I. We both drank a lot, but hey, it was college. I didn't know he was drinking in the mornings or waking up in the middle of the night for more. I also didn't know until later that he was probably bipolar and unmedicated. One night, after some relatively heavy drinking, though we hadn't blacked out, I went to bed. Around 5 a.m., I woke up to use the bathroom. As I passed his bedroom door on the way back, I noticed a piece of paper sticking out from under it. I looked down and saw it said, "I'm sorry, old toothless," in large, scraggly letters. Immediately, I started knocking on his door. No response. I pounded harder and yelled his name. Still nothing. Fear gripped me as I realized the implications. I was still intoxicated, but my mind raced with possibilities. So I stepped back, crossed my arms over my chest, and rammed the door with my shoulder. The lock on the door tore through the frame, sending splinters flying, but I didn't care. My best friend was inside, unconscious in the bed, and seemed like he hurt himself. On the floor were about 3 empty bottles of various tablets. Sadly, they were mine, not his. A fact that haunted me. Capsules and tablets were scattered around him on the bed and floor. I remembered what I'd learned in first aid and grabbed my phone, dialing 911 and putting it on speaker. Then I grabbed a pair of dish towels, tied them around his wounds, and tried to prop up his legs to wake him. He barely responded. I stayed with him, applying pressure to the wound and gathering the medicine bottles for the EMTs. Within minutes, an ambulance and 2 police cars arrived. The medics took over quickly while the cops questioned me and searched the scene. They found his cutter and collected all the medicine bottles it gathered as evidence. After questioning me further and taking my statement, they eventually left. Walking out with the cops, I joined the others who lived in the mansion, now gathered outside. The police informed me of the hospital he'd been taken to and offered to drive me, since I was still intoxicated. Reluctantly, I accepted, riding in the back of the police car for the first and only time in my life. At the hospital, I sat by my best friend's side as they pumped his stomach and stitched his injuries. Thankfully, the injuries were superficial, and most of the medicine was over the counter, causing minimal damage. I even had to hold him down while the nurses performed a catheterization as there were no male nurses on duty. A strange experience. Around 8 or 9 a.m., seeing he was stable, I stepped outside for a smoke, walking a fair distance from the hospital as per regulations. Sitting on the curb, a white pickup pulled. It was the female officer who had brought me to the hospital. She handed me a brown paper bag containing my friend's belongings, including the cutter. Everything had been processed, and she thought I would have it instead of my friend. It wasn't standard protocol, but it felt right. She then offered to drive me back home in her personal vehicle, going beyond her duty off the clock. My friend survived, and briefly attended a program after leaving the hospital. He moved back in with his parents, and sadly, we drifted apart. It's hard to explain why, but what happened deeply affected me. 3 months later, he passed away. Our friends gathered in my living room, silent and grieving. One friend, who had recently gone through a tough divorce, began to speak and cry. I don't recall the context, but at one point he said, "Gently, gently, gently." I laughed, though it wasn't appropriate or funny. It just happened. I felt terrible about it, apologized, hugged him, and we all shared our sorrow. Even now, 4 years later, I vividly remember the expression of my friend's face and the sound of his voice, "Gently, gently, gently." Sometimes you'll laugh in the face of difficult situations. I don't know why, but it's happened to me too. It's not exactly the right thing to do, but it must be some kind of coping mechanism. Story 2. My girlfriend lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with her friend. Both me and her roommate's boyfriend lived there. The girls were getting upset with each other, and things had been going south. Then one day near the end of a Walking Dead episode, we started talking about problems, and talking turned into argument. Things were sad, and he pulled a weapon on me. I asked why he would do that and if I had been threatening him by yelling while sitting on the couch. He never pointed it at me, but had it in his hand. My girlfriend pulled me into her bedroom where I called the police. When they got there, we had already gone outside, leaving him alone in the other bedroom. When the police entered, there was a loud bang, and he ended it all. We left that apartment and never went back except to move out. This is the reason why I don't watch The Walking Dead anymore. His girlfriend said he had been thinking of ending it all for months. This is why you get help. Help just means telling people, talking about it. I thought it was just for attention when his girlfriend said he was going to do it. It wasn't. It sucks, knowing you could have done things differently, and it sucks more not knowing if it would have made things better or worse. I've accepted it wasn't my fault. I've moved on. But man, do I wish I would have mentioned it at some point, even as a half joke, so I would know it might be true and could help. Story 3. When I was a freshman, my roommate basically had his girlfriend, who had her own room on her floor, move into our small dorm. They were going at it all the time for 4 solid months. I'd wake up and they were at it. Going to sleep, they were at it. Coming back from class, still at it. It was completely out of hand. It was every day, at least 5 times a day for months. There were boxes of rubber everywhere in his side. I basically couldn't be in my room. One day after a long day, I just wanted to come home, sit down, and play Mortal Kombat with my friends in my room. But you guessed it, the door was locked. Dejected, I went to our lounge and told my friends, I really just want to walk in there, sit down, and play just to spite them. One friend looked up at me and said, why don't you? I was shocked, but then nodded and said, yeah, why don't I? Let's go, boys. Without even knocking, 12 people followed me as I unlocked the door, walked in, and ignored them. I turned on my Xbox and we played for hours. They just sat there dumbfounded. That same week, I changed rooms. The next one wasn't much better, but at least I could be in it. Story 4. My first roommate. Oh, memories. It was very heavy, socially awkward, and definitely psychotic. He often mumbled to himself with shifty eyes, ate my food, and alternated between railing against the evils of religion and trying to get me to join the army of the Virgin or some other Catholic sect. He often lounged around in his tidy-whities and refused to dress if I had guests or girls over. He would just sit down and put a blanket over his lap. I walked in on him doing his thing numerous times, and even using my tissues. He also had long phone arguments with his girlfriend who, according to the wallet photo he had of her, looked like Greedley from Captain Planet. The kicker for me was when he had a breakdown and called the RA and a counselor to talk with him while I was writing a paper. He was highly agitated and at one point said, I just looked over at Beetlejuice while he was asleep and thought to myself, I should just take out my tool and unalive him then myself. No offense, Beetlejuice. I was in the zone with my paper, so I automatically replied, none taken. Then did a double take as the horror dawned on me. I exchanged confused eye contact with my RA. I noped out of there as soon as possible and moved to a different floor. Did she look like Greedley, or did he really carry around a photo of an animated character and call it his girlfriend? Please tell me he dated a cartoon character. Story 5. The freshman roommate was an okay guy, but we didn't have much in common. I think the housing department matched us up simply because we both liked ska. The dude seemed rather asexual. He had friends, but never had guests. I couldn't tell if he was gay or straight or what. Keep in mind that in those days, even in the most enlightened circles, some people tried to stay in the closet. One of the things I regret most about college was drinking to excess. I get wasted and remember very little about the night before. One night I was way too hammered. Don't even remember how I got back to my room, but I woke up around 4 a.m. to the oddest dream, which was that while I was passed out, my roommate came over to my bed and climbed on top of me. In that dream, I woke up while he was on his knees. I rolled over and, with one solid push, shoved him across the room where he crashed into his bed in his tidy-whities. I was a lot bigger and stronger than him and sent him flying. I can still see the image of him hitting his bed like it was yesterday. I went back to being passed out and later woke up remembering that weird dream. My roommate was gone. But later that day, I saw him and he had a swollen lip. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, so I'm not going to say for sure what happened, but a couple of weeks later, one of the guys next door asked me if I wanted to swap roommates and move into his room. And I said yes in a flash. Story 6. In my second year of school, I transferred to an out-of-state school and had to get an apartment because there was no room in on-campus housing for transfer students. The school provided us with a list of other students in the same situation so we could find roommates and go in on a place together. I ended up doing just that with my roommate. Things were great for about 2 years, but then he started going downhill. His grades were slipping, his girlfriend dumped him, and he didn't make the golf team. Poor guy. Around this time, he also stopped contributing around the apartment. No cleaning dishes, taking out the trash, or buying toilet paper. I finally decided to keep my own toilet paper stashed in my room in a locked cabinet. Days went by and no toilet paper appeared in the bathroom. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into a little over a month. One day my girlfriend was over and needed to use the bathroom. She finished up, washed her hands, and went to dry them in the towel hanging over the toilet when I heard her freak out. The underside of the towel was covered in feces. My roommate had been wiping himself with the towel and hanging it back up. I have no idea how I never smelled it. I ended up throwing the towel on his bed and leaving him to a roll of toilet paper with a note that said, I think you need this more than I do. We never spoke again after that, and when our lease was up soon after, we parted ways. I just cannot even imagine being so miserable or whatever that I would rather wipe myself with the same towel repeatedly than buy some toilet paper. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 7. I live in a large house with my girlfriend and 3 other guys. My girlfriend had a calico cat and one of our roommates, whom we'll call Lenny, had a border collie. My girlfriend's cat had a habit of swiping food if left unattended, and Lenny was known for his excessive drinking and medicine use, often passing out randomly around the house. He wasn't fond of cats, being more of a dog person. For a while, I had suspected him of taking Angel, the cat, into his room and terrorizing her like some sort of child, but I was never capable of substantiating that concern. However, I could have never imagined what ended up happening. It was only Lenny and I in the house, and it was in the basement, an unfinished cellar really, tending to my hydroponic garden. I realized I had left the basement door open. I was concerned that the cat may have gone in, and I didn't want to lock her in the dark, damp basement. I went upstairs and started searching for her. I looked in her usual spots behind the couch, in the clothes hamper, on my bed, but she was nowhere to be found. I went back downstairs thinking she may have actually gotten locked in the basement when I heard a raspy and long meow. The sound was coming from the bathroom. I found her lying in the shower stall with little drops of liquid down her hind legs. She was dragging herself into the corner with only her front paws. I went to pick her up, and when I did, her left rear leg just flopped over her backside. Her leg was clearly broken. I had to take Angel to the animal hospital where I was informed she suffered blunt force trauma to her left rear side, breaking her femur. They said it was similar to when they see animals hit by cars. I asked if there was any chance it could have been Lenny's dog. I was told that none of the trauma was indicative of dog attacks. Angel never goes outside, even if the door's wide open, so there was no way it could have been a car. Plus, how would she even have gone back in the house on her own? Lenny was the only suspect at this point. He was the only one in the house. He didn't like the cat. He was drunk and on pills at the time of the incident. I'd witnessed him being slightly cruel to his own dog. I asked the vet if a person could have done this damage. The vet said someone would have had to have kicked or thrown her against something solid extremely hard. Angel was about 13 years old and not in the best of health. My girlfriend and I did not have the money to cover a $5,000 surgery, so we had to put Angel down. I got home and I discussed everything with the other roommates, and then we approached Lenny. Lenny was a horrible liar with an easy tell. He would never look you in the face when he lied. He, of course, denied doing anything with crappy excuses and immediately blaming other people in the house. We gave him 72 hours to vacate the premises, and he complied. That was the last I ever saw of Lenny. Story 8. My wife, who was my fiancée at the time, rented a house for a semester with 2 other girls who turned out to be difficult to live with. My wife owned most of the household items: TV, couches, tables, plates, washer and dryer, PC, you name it. During that semester, these girls managed to mess up nearly everything. They scratched up the non-stick pans, damaged the printer, and broke most of the dishes. They had an issue with me being around, although I mostly stayed in my wife's room when I visited. We both had busy schedules. She had 2 part-time jobs and was a full-time student. When we had free time, we preferred to spend it together. Maybe they thought I was standoffish, who knows. On the other hand, their boyfriends practically lived there, using the washer daily for their laundry. I never used it. Things got worse when my wife stopped buying groceries because the guys were eating everything in the fridge. This irritated me. So after my reserve weekends with the Marines, I started showing up in full gear, muddy combat boots and all, staring down at the guys like I dared them to say something. They never did. When my wife finally moved out and we got our own place, her friend and I helped move everything. It was winter break, so the girls weren't home. They had left their stuff in the fridge, so I neatly stacked it all on the floor. I also moved their belongings from the table to the floor and piled the clothes from the dryer where they should have been folded. It was a subtle way to show them that without my wife's contributions, they had nothing. It was a small act, but it still makes me smile when I think about it. It was my way of saying screw you to a couple of entitled girls who couldn't see past their own needs. And the best part, I never had to see those girls again. Story 9. I had this roommate, let's call him Samwise. I first realized he was a little weird when he would come home drunk and play Guitar Hero. That wasn't too bad, but he would start performing poorly and giving his fingers full-blown pep talks. The one day he returned after getting completely wasted and decided he urgently needed to use the bathroom. However, in his intoxicated state, he got the order of operations mixed up on how to walk there. Samwise stood up, pulled down his briefs to his knees, and attempted to walk out the door to the bathroom. He stumbles outside the door and I heard grunting noises. He pushed and grunted until finally letting out a long sigh of relief. He came back inside, wiped himself with a t-shirt and settled down for a long night of snoring. The next morning when I left, there was a lovely surprise outside the door. A brown nugget, and 3 annoyed cleaning staff members playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who would clean it up. Samwise was so drunk, he never knew the plight of the 3 who cleaned his mess in the hallway. As the semester ended, Samwise showed up drunk again. He forgot how to use his key and shouted this to me at a bright and early 4:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. I ignored his drunken rambling, hoping my RA would call campus police, but no such luck. Eventually, I opened the door before everyone on my floor turned against me. But the adventure wasn't over yet. For Samwise needed to use the bathroom once again. He had learned from the last time, though. He would not fall in the hallway again. He stood up, looked around, and decided to drop his tighty-whitey straight to the ground. He stumbled forth into the hallway. exposed for all to see. I followed with a blanket, regretting not staying in bed. Instead, I was ensuring Samwise wasn't dead in the bathroom. The sun began to rise on a brand new day as I stood in that hallway. A beauty from down the hall woke up, wondering about the commotion, with cute bedhead hair and all. I warned her to go back. Samwise was stirring. His 250 pounds of shame emerged from the bathroom, and this was not something she wanted to witness. But alas, she was too late. Her mind still fogged and drowsy. Samwise stumbled out right in front of her, his manhood as visible as the whites of her eyes. She ran away, never to be seen again without a grimace of dismay. Samwise moved out shortly after, and I was happy as could be. The staff knew about the ordeal with Samwise and decided for the rest of the year my room would be just mine. Story 10. First semester, freshman year. The first roommate was the worst. He hailed from the coal region of Pennsylvania at 6'5" and around 260 pounds. All of this unfolded in that initial semester, and I moved out before Christmas break. The first time I saw him without a shirt, I noticed he was covered in circular wounds. I asked about them. Apparently, he and his high school buddies would have bonfire parties and brand themselves with hot bottles and lighters. Once he was upset over not being able to reach his girlfriend back home. He smashed things and raged one moment, then sobbed the next. Around midnight, he finally got her on the line. He chewed her out, but quickly became embarrassed when he remembered she was at a wrestling match. One night, he and a high school friend stumbled into our dorm room. They were intoxicated, but behaving strangely. Turns out they had each downed 4 bottles of Robitussin and were hallucinating. His friend sat on my bed, mumbling about being eaten by a demon. I promptly kicked them both out. And the best one yet, he decided to hang a huge Confederate flag in our dorm window, right by the dumpsters everyone used. Again, being the prick he was, he admitted to me that he had no Southern ancestors. He just wanted to annoy people off, he said. With black relatives of mine, this was the last straw. I started making plans with my friends to move out. Dorm phone numbers could be figured out by room numbers. One day, a visibly large black dude called when I happened to be alone and inquired about the flag in our room. I told him I despised that thing, but I was only 5 feet tall. He said, no problem, not to tell the racist, and hung up. The following day, 4 muscular black gentlemen knocked on our door. I shook hands with the biggest guy in the center. He asked, did I speak with you on the phone? I replied, yep. He nodded to his friends. This guy's cool. Hey man, you should take a walk. Yeah, I think I'll do that. As I left, I glimpsed the fear in my roommate's eyes as my new friends entered our dorm room. I sat in the lobby with some guys who would later become great friends. The 4 men returned, the flag now balled up. They invited us to hang out and party that night. Cool guys. They definitely roughed him up a bit, but they were smart about it. No broken noses or anything. My roommate and I didn't speak at all after that. We still had a month left in the semester. He dropped out the following semester. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.